of Nevuah. Now, what does it mean when we say Kabbalah is continuation of Nevuah? We'll get to that in a minute, inside Bezrat Hashem. But what I'm trying to introduce here is the idea that the Ramchal, which is something that's very hard to understand. At least I'm having a hard time to understand this idea. But I think the whole point is the Ramchal is saying you can't understand it. Is that the Sfirot are non-understandable. The Sfirot are non-understandable lights, meaning they're still godly. So once they're still godly, then they don't have form, and they don't have any specific type of way of relating to them. And that's exactly what he's saying, that from the Or Ein Sof comes out 10 individual lights, 10 individual ways of acting that are not specific in any way, and they cannot be described or given a name or given a specific category, because all of these things means that we've grasped it. We can put it into a box. We can say this is it, this is that, and that doesn't exist with these lights as they are as they were revealing from the Or Ein Sof. So that's why Ramchal says that Hashem wanted us to know His ways. So that's the whole point of Him revealing the end of the Sfirot, was for us to know His ways. So He created the prophecy of Nevuah, which is interesting because we don't really know what Nevuah is at all. We know that Nevuah doesn't exist nowadays, and which is why we look at Nevuah as a very high level of human existence. Like, human being isn't a prophet. There were some few people in history that really worked hard and became prophets. But the truth is, if we think about it, if we look in the Torah, Hashem created Adam and He spoke to him. Cain and Hevel, Hashem spoke to. Noach, Hashem spoke to. All these people, Avram, eventually Hashem spoke to. Meaning the whole point of the Torah's history is to tell us that man and God, meaning creation and creator, are supposed to be in dialogue. There is the way, the fixed way of things are supposed to be is through prophecy. So we look at it and like, okay, so what's the point of creating, what's the point of revealing something if it can only be seen through Nevuah? No, exactly, that Hashem wants to reveal Himself, and He created a way for us to know Him, which is through Nevuah. So, right, so this is very interesting, because that means that really we are trying to, when we talk about the Kabbalah, we're kind of, according to Ramchal at least, we're trying to use tools that we don't have to discuss something that we want to at least continue in some way. It's like almost you could say it's a post-prophecy way of talking about prophetic ideas. And this is what Ramchal is going to talk to us about in today's opening 6. And we're up to, it's called part 2, Chelik Bet of Petach Vav, of opening 6. So he says as follows: Shebertzoto shetiyena nodaot. So Hashem wants, the Infinite One wants that His Ratzon should be known. That's why He creates these 10 individual observable lights / energies / ways of acting. And as He brought the Mishnah, I think we mentioned it last week, the Mishnah in Avot that says Hashem could have created the world with one ma'amar, with one utterance, and He created it in 10 utterances, because 10 utterances is, as we spoke about last week, is the way it can be perceived, and the way it can be understood, because it's a process, it's broken down and it's observable. So therefore, because He wants it to be known, He therefore created the system of 10 Sfirot. Now, the Ramchal points out the fact that he says He wants it to be known. Gam zeh talui b'ratzon. Now, Hashem wants it to be known. Shekachot ha'ele af pi sheyeshnam lo haya tzarich sheyeh behem hasaga klal. Now, even if Hashem created the world with 10 utterances, meaning He created in the world in a way where it was a step-by-step way, so to speak, which He didn't have to, but He wanted to. But that still doesn't mean that it would be able to be perceived and observed and known by man. But because He wanted to be known by man, which is what Ramchal says, that the whole purpose of creation is to create that relationship, is to be known. Therefore, Asa shekol midah tira'eh besod ha'ara achad. Hashem made, so to speak, a specific shape or some kind of vision to represent this light that we can now, as he's going to say now, v'hainu shenikva lehem chok mareh lahavin amidah, dahainu hakoach, ad yedei hadimyon hamiddameh. So now he's introducing the concept of the prophet's imagination. Right, so he brings here, we're going to continue reading, and then we'll explain a little bit what it means. I don't fully understand it myself. It's very interesting ideas. There's actually Rav Ari Kaplan. I've read this. I didn't get my hands on it right now. He speaks a little bit about prophecy in one of his meditation books, or a couple of his books. So this is what he brings from the Rambam, the idea of the prophet's imagination being a strong role in the prophetic vision. So the Rambam says as follows: So, for example, Hashem wants to reveal that He's acting with Chesed. So He will show a vision of a lion. Now, the lion in the Merkavah is the right-hand side of the Merkavah, and the lion represents Chesed. Now, what would the prophet actually see? The prophet wouldn't see a lion. The prophet would receive godly energy. So basically, Hashem would reveal the sphera to his soul, the sphere of Chesed, and by saying that is basically Hashem communicating to man that I am now acting to the world, or I'm going to act in the world with this energy, which is what the sphere is. But the sphere is not observable. The sphere doesn't have a shape, doesn't have a form. But the prophet receives this godly flow, and his soul senses it, which then in his imagination is translated into the lion, which is kind of the way the imagination perceives this godly flow. So Hashem made it that way. He created this association between the godly flow and the vision that the godly flow evokes in the prophet having the experience. And therefore he sees a lion, and then he's able to, through the power of prophecy, using another part of his mind, Rambam says, to then interpret the concept of a lion being connected to the idea of Chesed. So it's almost like a three-step process. It's receiving godly flow, which is unobservable. It's the imagination being awakened with the vision, which Hashem connects to make the godly flow observable through the imagination, and then he has to use his mind to get the pitaron, or the way of decoding the vision into practical, into actual message or an idea. So זה כמו שכתוב ברמב"ם, שבראot הנביא מערה הנבואה נחקק בליבו פתרונה. He has to then, after he's seen the lion, he will then understand that the message is representing Chesed. So, for example, you have in Yecheskel, I think it's the first nevuah of Yecheskel, Hashem says, "What do you see?" And he says, "I see a stick made out of an almond, a branch from an almond tree." And he says, and the Malach says, "Do you know what that means?" He says, "No, tell me what that means." And then he receives the translation or the interpretation where it says that the word shaked in Hebrew is like it means like ani shaked lasota, meaning I'm going to do the following immediately. Like a shaked means I'm it's imminent, and I'm on it. I'm on the case. So he had to have this ability to. So God, Hashem, basically showed this idea of the punishment of the Jewish people coming forward, of the that was, I guess, the sphere of Gvura, which was represented by this almond stick, and then he had to get the interpretation. So Ramchal takes this idea of the fact that it took 2 steps to tell us that the Navi, when he saw the form or the vision of the prophecy, he didn't see the thing itself, which is why he needed the second step of understanding the message through the vision, Whereas if the vision itself would have been the actual, if the vision itself would have been the actual sphera, meaning we would say the sphera has its own form, then he would see the thing itself. It wouldn't need to be. He would actually experience the chesed, and he would understand it without this three-step process. So this is what he says: "V'tzrichen anu lezeh." We need to have this two-step process of vision and interpretation. Ki im hayta ha'ara atzmit, vadai hu shehaya lehem lahavin ba ha'inyan hatzmila. If the sphere itself would have this form or shape or idea expressed directly through the lion or through the vision he's seeing, then he wouldn't need the interpretation. Because the association of the vision being connected to the sphera is not inherent. It's just a connection that Hashem made, meaning it doesn't actually represent the thing itself. It's just a way of perceiving it by the prophet. Therefore, hayat tarich od inyan acher lahavin inyan hanirmaz benevuah. Therefore, you had to have the interpretation. El shekach hu inyan shememela mavinim ma inyan ha'ara hi v'gam inyan b'chinotea pratiyot. So now he's saying that.
Describe the three-stage process. The first stage is the godly flow.
Right.
Then the vision. Then the decoding.
Yeah. So the Rambam doesn't say the godly flow. The Rambam says that he sees the vision, and he has to then decode it. The Ramchal is saying that from the fact that there's this two-step process of vision and decoding implies that there is a first hidden step, which Rambam doesn't describe. He's saying it's the sphirot coming through in a way that's unperceivable.
But the Ramchal is suggesting that the godly flow that precedes it, at that level, are you seeing the sefirot or not?
No, the sefirot can't be seen.
So the sefirot are only seen at the vision stage.
So they're not. The sefirot never seen.
Never seen.
Never seen. But it's a vision that the imagination kind of gets inspired by the fact that this specific godly flow was upon him. Mm-hmm. So this is the Ramchal really saying that there is no form to the sphera, and anytime we talk about sphera having a certain color, having a certain name, having a certain idea, it's only because of the medium of prophecy. Meaning, prophecy exists in man. Like man is the experiencer of the prophetic vision, and it's Hashem talk. Basically, prophecy is kind of the way that we can understand Hashem language, still remaining human, and meaning that Hashem doesn't have human language. Hashem has the way of the point of connection is only through prophecy, because the prophet has the ability to use his imagination and his mind to understand something that is beyond imagination and mind.
So how do we connect it today to Hashem if we don't have prophecy?
Oh, beautiful. That's really the question that we have here. And so Ramchal doesn't necessarily discuss this question per se, but he's basically telling us that Kabbalah is a continuation of the idea of prophecy, meaning the void is there because we're not communicating with God anymore, but we're happy to kind of use the prophets, that what they told us and the books that they wrote, and kind of work through them and take the ideas that we have documented and then see what we have to now understand on a non-prophetic level. So, but because Hashem actually did speak to the prophets through these visions, so we can now use the post-imagination state and now refer to Hashem as he acts in these ways, even though it's not the way it's by him, but that's the way he expressed it to us, because he wants us to be able to speak about it like that. So he says, so when he sees the energy that he's now visioned through the flow, every era in history has its specific way of governing the world, a specific connection and interaction with the world. So through the vision, he's able to discern that this is the way that Hashem is acting or is going to act in the coming time. Okay, so we're going to start the next opening, and really the point we're going to say is that like to just address what Shlomo asked is that the truth is we don't have prophecy anymore, and we're kind of working with a post-prophetic world, which is really why if you have Moshe Rabbeinu, right? The Rambam says Moshe Rabbeinu was the highest Navi, but he was also a big Chacham. He gave us the whole Torah. So it says in Avot, right, that Moshe Rabbeinu he received the Torah from Hashem, and the Torah includes in it both, it's really a prophecy, the highest level of prophecy, and it's also all the laws of Torah, which is understood on a Chachma level. But for 1,000 years, until the end of the first temple, it says he was given over to the Nevi'im, right? It was given over to Yeshua, to the elders, and to the Nevi'im. So as long as Nevuah was still around, that was the main mode of connection to God, because it's a more high resolution connection, because you can directly communicate. But once the Nevuah ended, that created a vacuum, so to speak, in the consciousness of the Jewish people, and in a way, the Chachamim, the Torah Shebal Peh, the law. The Torah Shebal Peh, the Mishnayot, and the Chachamim, they took over the job of leading the Jewish people. It was given over to Anshe Knesset Agdola, and they were basically still continuing that idea. But what happened was, Ramchal explains in Adib Amarom and other books, was that the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Chachmei Azor and the people that continued the idea of Kabbalah, they kept the continuation of Nevuah, because they were more interested, or at least also interested, in what Hashem wants from the world, as opposed to what the Halacha says to do. Because what the Halacha says to do is kind of, okay, that's what we can focus on right now, because we don't have Nevuah. But the Kabbalists wanted to know Hashem and His ways, so they continued to decode and try and express and formulate new ways of discussing Hashem and His ways of acting, in order to focus on the point of connection and the general role of humanity and the Jewish people in the world. Because really, if we think about it, he brings here in the beginning a very interesting idea from, I think this is Friedlander, who was where he used to print Ramchal, he was very into Ramchal. So he says that when we find, where was the first prophecy that all the Jewish people had together? Was that Kriyat Yam Suf?
Kriyat Yam Suf?
Yeah, splitting the sea. It says that all the Jewish people saw more than Yechezkel saw. They saw Ze Eli Vanveil. They pointed, right, and they said, "This is my God."
Right.
So that was a mass prophetic vision. And what do we understand that to mean? Ze Eli Vanveil. The rabbis bring a whole bunch of different ways of understanding what Vanveil means, but they all seem to be a very similar theme. So one of them says Vanveil means to do mitzvot beautifully, or Vanveil means I should be similar to Him and act in His ways of mercy, or it means to create a beautiful Beit HaMikdash, or it means to beautify Hashem in the world. So basically, all of these things are explaining the concept, which also Rashi brings in the Gemara. Vanveil means anivahu. Anivahu is describing, it's a one word for the relationship between creator and creation, between Hashem and the Jewish people, which really is, this is what Ramchal is telling us, is the whole point of Kabbalah and its predecessor Nevuah, is to enable that and to know and to kind of analyze and understand the relationship between what Hashem wants from the world and what the world has to give, and where the world is heading for Hashem's plan, which is really very interesting, because again we have that in for example by the Meraglim, and we have that this week's Pasha with the Egel, right? Hashem said I want to destroy the Jewish people, right? Let me, now leave me, and my wrath will completely annihilate them. And Moshe knew that, as Rashi explains, Moshe took that as a sign, as like, don't leave me, challenge me, right? So Ramchal explains, what does that mean? It means that Hashem, at that moment, he reacted naturally with Gevurah, because the Jewish people betrayed him. So the midah of Gevurah wanted to come through, so to speak. So Hashem said, leave me and let my Gevurah act right now. But Hashem didn't want that. Hashem wanted, because Moshe was a prophet and he knew that Hashem has different ways of acting, he wanted us, or he wanted Moshe, he wanted humanity to suggest a different way of acting.
You mean that the leave me is the Halacha and the don't leave me is the Kabalah?
Interesting. I mean, Moshe had them together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess in a way, if Moshe would have been a halachist, he would have said, okay, that's the halacha, kill them. Right? So, but in a way, the idea of prophecy is actually to know that Hashem wants us to be active partners in creation, in the sense that he wants to be challenged in not only just saying, we trust you, or just generally saying, please be nice to us. He wants us to actually point out to him how we want him to act based on our knowledge of him and his ways. And which is why in Shemona Esra as well, which is based on the tefillot, most of the tefillah is based on excerpts, what's the word? Excerpts from the Nach, right? If you look in Tehillim, lots of tefillah is basically pieces of Tanakh that we basically use in the liturgy of the prayer, which basically was saying that you act in this way, that you are one who gives healing. And we know that because you've revealed yourself to the prophets as a healer. And really, and if you on the Kabbalistic level, if you look in the Siddur, the Kabbalistic Siddurim, you'll see that, for example, Rafa'enu has a Shem Havayah with the Cholam on top, because it's referring to the sphere of Tiferet. So we're basically telling Hashem, you revealed yourself as a creator that acts in the way of healing, i.e. Tiferet. So we tell you, please act in this way. So it's the partnership in creation is to kind of to know Hashem, and kind of he wants us to be a bit nosy and like kind of like cheeky,
holy
exactly.
cheekiness.
Right. Azut Dikdusha. Yeah, because basically a partner, it has to be able to, talk to his partner and be like, yo, we've got to run this together. This is how I think we should run the business. So that's a very interesting thing where Ramchal, and this is very interesting because Ramchal actually is alone on this, to be honest. Ramchal it's a big machlokет. Lots of Mekubalim disagree with Ramchal about this, meaning to say that the Sfirot are not really the way we describe them. The Sfirot are pure godly energy, and all the names and concepts that we talk about the Sfirot are purely in the human experience of them through prophecy. So the Ramchal is basically, we're going to see next time, I guess we'll see in Petach Zayin. Ramchal has this where he's like, okay, so it's the Sfirot are obviously not any form, because it's godly. In godly, there's no form in Hashem, but they're obviously it's not just words that we're attributing; they're not connected to the thing itself. So is chesed really chesed, or is chesed just a pure light that we perceive as chesed? So where does the chesed begin? Is it just the human experience, or is it really Hashem acting in chesed?
That's a great question.
So that's really the question of how Sfirot exists, and Ramchal is pushing it towards the human experience, saying that he wants to keep the godly realm pure light, pure infiniteness, obviously broken down into 10, so it's not any more infinite, so it's observable, but exactly what is being observed, the form and the words and the shapes and the different ways of acting, which we're going to be introduced to more concepts of Kabbalistic concepts of how the Sfirot interact and work. All of that doesn't really work the way we see it. The way we see it is just the prophetic vision of how the human perceives it through prophecy.
Yeah, it's very similar to radio waves. You have a radio station beaming out radio waves, and what are they beaming out? Radio waves. But we don't experience it as that. We only experience it as sound once we've converted it into sound.
Right.
That's how we perceive it. But that's not what it is at its essence.
Wow. Yeah, interesting. So it's kind of it's carrying it on like a very raw way kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's a vessel that interprets it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a little bit like, the fallen tree makes sound.
Right. Right. Is it only from our experience? Like
It's only from our experience.
Like what they call it, the quantum physics, where the observer changes things.
Right.
Really, everything's kind of non-defined.
Right.
So yeah, so this is we'll get into it next week more. There's a big machloket with the Leshem, for example, very against Ramchal about this. He's very respected Ramchal. He actually says that he was involved in printing Ramchal, but in this idea, he says that Ramchal is not giving the Sfirot enough respect, in the sense that everything Ari and Zohar talks about are actual energies as they exist in Atzilut, and they're not just the human experience of them. It's interesting because I don't really know the difference between the two. I mean, but we'll get into it next week exactly what Ramchal wants to say. Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Chazak Baruch.
Chazak Baruch.